Oh, hello there. It's prequel time today. Why the winter gear? Well, I just came from Antarctica, where a Norwegian polar station found a thing, which is a good thing to do. We're gonna take a look today at the movie The Thing, the prequel to the 1982 John Carpenter classic with the same name. So let's dive into it. So it's a bit tricky with the entire doing a prequel to a classic without any of the original cast members, since it was 30 years ago. But in my opinion, it's better that they did this than if they would have done a reboot or a remake or something like that, because it would have been really lazy. At least this time we get to find out what happened at the Norwegian station. Wait a minute, we already do that. Well, that's my other problem with this movie. It is the entire, I call it the prequel hole problem. Every prequel needs to fit into the hole of the movie that comes after it. Which means that if character A is in the movie that comes after the prequel, then he's going to survive, which kills all suspense. I'm looking at you, Star Wars prequels, by the way. Let's dive into it. So, this movie takes place just before the events of the 1982 version. And we have Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who comes to Antarctica because they have found something. I don't know why they have picked up basically a student to fly her 10,000 miles to get her to see them pull out an alien from underneath the ice. Why didn't they, go with a more seasoned expert? Well, hot chick maybe, but anyway, that's not a really huge problem. And we all know what happens after that. We have a shape-shifting alien who takes over some of the crew, and who is human and who is the monster, and are we all going to die? This takes place in Antarctica, and in a odd twist of fate, this feels like reheated leftovers more than an original story, despite how cold everything is. The problem is also that we have a bunch of characters that are not as memorable as the original one, with a bunch of actors that are serviceable. Well, Joel Edgerton is awesome. He's always awesome. Don't you call him anything else than awesome, by the way. There is not a lot of suspense, actually, because of the problems with this being a prequel. And also the atmosphere and the charm, which is an odd word, but the charm of the original one is lost. It is not a train wreck. It tries so hard to be a really, really good prequel to the original. I have to give them props for it. It's not terribly done. They really try to get the feeling of the first one across, and they sort of get that. I also like that they add a bit to the lore of the original movie. That's good. And we also have Christopher Hivju in this movie. Yes, Tormund Giantsbane from Game of Thrones is there with the Norwegians. Ja, vi älskar detta landet. It's fun that the Norwegians actually get to speak Norwegian. Props to you. So this is an above average monster action horror movie, which is kind of unoriginal in comparison to what has come out in the recent 10 years, which is one of the other problems with this movie, is the fact that when The Thing came out 1982, it was kind of a unique story, although Alien had come out a couple of years previous, but never mind about that. Nowadays, this is sort of your standard run-of-the-mill horror movie format, which hurts the product severely. But considering what I'm giving it for rating, it is still considered a pretty decent movie. I mean, it's not getting the shaft or anything. It's an okay movie. It's far better than I actually expected it to be. The original one was so strong that it sort of spills over a little bit on this one. So, well, I mean, it is what it is. It is a... You know what's going to happen if you have seen the original one. For what it was, I was entertained and I didn't regret seeing it. But I really hope they will please let this one rest now. No more things, please. The Thing is somewhere in between. It's one of these, you know, pretty decent movies, and 53 is a pretty okay rating if you ask me. I don't want to be nagging on filmmakers. So how would you get this to work? It would definitely not be rebooting it or remaking it. That would have been silly and even lamer than what this movie was. In my opinion, you could have done two things that could have worked. Either you could have done a more accurate adaptation of the original story Who Goes There, and probably have it set in a very different period of time, maybe the 1950s, I don't know, maybe even earlier, maybe the late 1900s. That could maybe have worked in, you know, some other place, or maybe they could even have done it, I mean, in the modern day setting, Afghanistan, in, you know, in the high mountains, and they could have, you know, a station or something where the Thing would have come. Or they could have done a sequel. They could have done a sequel that took place after the first movie, and then you would have had, you know, the Thing popping up in some very different location. The problem with that is Hollywood would have inadvertently destroyed John Carpenter's wonderfully bleak ending to his movie. They would have found some weird way to do a complete swerve on the entire thing, and we would have been utterly sad by the whole thing. But apart from that, a movie set on, you know, I mean, a ship maybe. There are actually comics that about the Thing that takes place after the original ones, that depict what happened to the rest of the characters. And apart from it being slightly bizarre and sometimes a bit over the top and silly, it gives me an idea that it could be done. This thing was probably the least bad thing Hollywood could have done at this point. But for what it's worth, it's okay. This is the Wikstrand signing out.